Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Jamie Eads joining you as always. Thanks for tuning into the Drum Shuffle. This is episode 27. Hope everybody's having a great week out there. We are having a great week over here at Drum Shuffle World Headquarters. We have a fantastic conversation for you today. We're going to be joined by Brandon Goodwin of Bees, just a phenomenal young jazz band leader from up in Canada, and he has just a ton of great knowledge to share with us, so please stay tuned. Los Cabos drumsticks may be the best kept secret from drummers today. Los Cabos drumsticks makes the finest tools to touch a drummer's hands in the business. The best news, almost every popular stick size is available in both white hickory and red hickory. If you don't know what red hickory is, it's made from the heartwood of the hickory tree, unlike regular white hickory, which is made from sapwood. Red hickory drumsticks will hold up to even the hardest hitting drummers. Their durability comes from the density of the wood, but they do not sacrifice the feel. Please visit LosCabosDrumsticks.com to learn more about their products. And don't forget to ask at your favorite retailer for Los Cabos drumsticks. All right, guys, as I mentioned, we are going to be joined today by Brandon Goodwin. Brandon is the band leader, drummer, and composer of Bees, and they are a mainstay on the jazz scene up in Montreal. Just a phenomenal young drummer, as I said in our intro, with just tons of great knowledge to share with us. They are just doing so many cool things. They have a new album that came out just a couple of months ago that's just a great listen. I encourage everybody to go out and grab that. So help me welcome to the Drum Shuffle, Brandon Goodwin. Hey, good afternoon, Brandon. How's it going today?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's summertime. It's my understanding that you're actually taking time away from your vacation to do this. So thanks for taking the time to come on the Drum Shuffle. We really appreciate it.
Oh man, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to talk drums any time of day, no matter if I'm working or on a vacation. I would just consider this hang part of my vacation, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have listened to the new record. It is absolutely fantastic, and we're going to talk all about that here in just a second. But typically what I like to do with my guests, tell us a little bit about how you got started into music. Did you just automatically gravitate towards the drums, or did you start on another instrument? Tell us how you got into drumming.
Yeah, sure. From an early age, I guess the age of probably 6, my parents would enroll us in music lessons. So I first started on the piano, and I was into it, but it wasn't. I didn't think much of it because I was just kind of playing the notes, and I liked the sound of it. And then moved to guitar, which I started connecting with a little bit more. And then once I hit, I guess it was the 6th or 7th grade, I started playing trumpet at school. And then one day my dad saw a drum kit in the newspaper, and he said, I'd actually been saving up to buy a guitar. And my dad was like, hey, we should go check out these drums. So I always say that he was the one who, it was his idea that I play the drums. And so I got my first drum kit at the age of, I think it's 13. So I played on drums before that, and I actually played at school. I'd switched to drums at that point. So it was around my early teenage years that I first got into it. And but as soon as I got the kit at home, I was just completely obsessed with it. I really connected with it. And I was just playing all day after school on the weekends, listening to records, trying to figure stuff out. There wasn't a teacher in my town. It was too small of a town to really have any sort of music education, like private classes. So I was just kind of like listening to, Nirvana records and stuff, trying to figure things out.
Well, I mean, I think that's the story of a lot of guys, I mean, very similar to my own story. I get a set of drums at, 12 years old and throw on any record you can and figure it out kind of thing, which is cool. Yeah. But I think the cool part of your story is you say your dad wanted you to play drums. That may be a first, when the parents are like, yeah, let's get drums. Let's get the loudest instrument in the house. That's fantastic.
I know, and the thing was, we were living out on a farm, and it was kind of a small house. So I think, probably after a couple of weeks, he was wishing I had the guitar. But he did say that over time he heard me developing, and eventually, it stopped sounding like banging and started sounding like real music. So yeah, I don't think they minded.
Well, that's awesome. That's the mark of good parenting, in my opinion. Well, so starting out as a young guy, now you said you were playing at school. Did you do marching as well to kind of get your rudiment chops up, or was it more of jazz band? I mean, you're obviously known for the jazz world. Did you immediately gravitate to jazz? So I guess there's two questions in there, really.
Mm-hmm. So actually, in Canada, there is not a very strong marching band kind of education system. So most schools don't have marching bands, which is very unfortunate in retrospect, because I see there's a lot of great drummers in the United States. They'll always say, yeah, I started a marching band, got my chops together, played in the jazz band, but it doesn't really work that way in Canada. I mean, there are some schools that have marching bands, but it's mostly from my experience and what I've heard is concert bands. So you're playing all sorts of different music with wind and reed, like horn, brass and reed instruments, playing snare drum and bass drum and timpani, that kind of stuff. So I did that from the ninth grade. And then also they have, at my school, I was very lucky. We also had a great jazz program. So it was all run by a single teacher. Like I said, I'm from a very small town. So I was so lucky that this guy, Jim Howie, give him a shout out. He, for the size of the town that I grew up in, it was really a good stroke of luck to have him as our only music teacher, because he was extremely dedicated. And he was also he is a phenomenal classical trumpet player. So he lived in Europe and studied with some world-class teachers. So luckily we had him kind of showing us the way. And it wasn't until I got closer to my senior year in high school that I got really into jazz. So I had always listened to it, and I liked the charts we were playing. I'd listen to some of the recordings. He'd give us a CD to check out, or like we'd listen in class to the original Count Basie version of the tune we were playing. But it wasn't until I decided to get serious about it when I was getting closer to graduating that I got really into jazz. But just like the drum said, I actually connected with jazz immediately. So it wasn't even like a thing where I had to question it. It was like, okay, I want to be a professional musician. University programs I'm interested in have a classical program or a jazz program. Okay, well, the jazz program has drum set. I love drum set. So there we go. So I really started to check out getting more serious about checking out the history of jazz drumming and jazz music. And it was, yeah, like I said, like the drums, I just fell in love with it right away and got very obsessed. So, yeah, that's kind of the early years of my drumming leading up through high school and going into university.
Well, and I know that, you decided to go to college, or as you guys say, up north of the border, university. I know that you decided to kind of move across Canada, really, for school, because you grew up in British Columbia, right?
Yeah, that's actually where I am. I'm there right now. But yeah, I grew up on the west side of Canada. Okay.
And you went to school in Montreal, is that right?
I did. I actually did one semester in Winnipeg, which is in the middle of Canada. And then I moved to Montreal. to finish my degree. So I did only one semester in Winnipeg, and then I did the rest in Montreal at Concordia University.
I got you. Well, and you know, I mean, obviously I know a little bit about the Canadian music scene. You know, I'm very fortunate to have a relationship with Dream Cymbals and Los Cabos Drumsticks, so I'll give a shout out to my guys. Yeah,
man.
But I know Concordia has a really great music program, so I'm assuming that, you know, the puzzle pieces, it sounds like, kind of fell together for you in that, okay, I'm going to find a university that has a good jazz program so that I can continue playing drums. You know, tell us a little bit about going to Montreal, because you guys and the band Bees, you've been kind of a mainstay in the Montreal music scene for quite a number of years. So did that just kind of grow out of your college experience, or did you just decide I'm going to Montreal and then found the college, I guess is what I'm really trying to ask?
Yeah, so originally when I moved to Montreal, it was to become a rock star with my good friend, and we moved to Montreal and we tried very hard to start our big rock band, and it turned out that although we made great music together, we weren't the best kind of team in like motivating each other. So I also moved there with the plan of going to music school. So for the first year and a half that I was there, I was just playing in this band and working a kitchen job. And then I applied to Concordia to finish my studies. And so yeah, that's kind of the first reason I moved to Montreal. But also, like, I had always planned to go back to school because I knew the importance of getting a degree. And also I knew that that was the place where I'd be able to meet like-minded musicians and also really learn about harmony and more about the non-drumming aspect of music, and specifically jazz. So, I mean, I was trying to teach myself. I was taking piano lessons and, you know, playing out of some books, but it really wasn't until I went to Concordia that I, you know, kind of dove right in and yeah. So I mean, it was kind of just to get to Montreal because, you know, where I'm from, there was really not a music scene. So I spent a week in Toronto and then a week in Montreal. And I think after my first day in Montreal, I knew that it would definitely be Montreal as my top choice.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, Montreal is known for its, you know, fantastic, you know, just art culture, you know, so probably a good pick, no doubt. Now, while you were attending Concordia, were you out, you know, obviously you said you were in a rock band for some time. Were you still doing rock gigs, or did you start getting into the jazz scene of Montreal, or were you doing both?
Yeah, I was kind of doing both. I was going to the jam sessions, like the jazz jam sessions. So there's a couple of really solid ones in Montreal. So I was going to those on a regular basis. But yeah, I mean, I just love playing music, and although our group is a jazz group and it's the music that I absolutely love to play, I'm also, you know, I play some blues. I play in a blues band and I play in a rock band. So, you know, it's just kind of a mixture.
So you're really doing a little bit of everything then, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I when I'm in my practice room and kind of, you know, woodshedding and really checking out recordings and stuff, it's mostly jazz. You know, that's because my band, you know, that's kind of my passion, and you know, it's I'm the band leader of the project, so I always want us to sound the best that we possibly can. So I feel like, you know, it's kind of my responsibility as well. But also, you know, I really love to learn about jazz. So, but I feel like the more I improve, the more the sound of the group improves. So it kind of pushes my focus in that direction.
Understood. And, you know, I mean, I think it's, when a drummer is a band leader, you know, and I've been in that situation a couple of times, and quite honestly, I don't like it. You know, I don't like everybody looking at me going, okay, what's next, Jamie? It's I like the democratic process a whole lot better. Where it's okay, I don't know, Steve, you're in charge of this, Dan, you're in charge of this, whatever the case may be. But I think what is really cool about Bees is it doesn't sound like a typical drummer-led quartet, right? It's not, how am I trying to say this? It's not a drum solo with other instruments. You guys really do sound like a unit, which I think is great.
That's actually a really great compliment. So thank you for that, Jamie. And that means a lot to me. And so I guess to kind of go with that point, that's always been my goal, is that we have that's a band. So I am the band leader of the group, but that's it. I don't want to be featured kind of as the main instrument. I want it to be a band sound. So maybe taking my experience playing in kind of rock bands and stuff like that growing up, and then applying that approach to a jazz group could have something to do with that. But yeah, and same with the way that I play the drums. I really try to fit into the group in the most musical way possible. And I find that anytime I try to do something to stand out, it's always the time when I mess things up, and I'll kind of feel a little bit silly for trying to, be kind of the focal point, because definitely in terms of the talent in the group, like this group is just, we're all equal. So, I don't think I could really do anything if I even tried to stand out from the other guys, because they're such fantastic musicians.
Well, and it really shows on the new record, which is called Kanata. It's a really good record, and I'm not just saying that. If I thought, well, it's just okay, I would tell you that. I try to be very honest. It's a good record. It sounds great. I really dig it. Tell us a little bit about the recording process, because and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read this was you guys really were out touring this material for quite some time, and then you went into the studio to do the material on record, which I think a lot of people do it the backwards way. In other words, you go into the studio, you record these new songs, then you go out and tour for 10 months, whatever the case may be, and you actually learn how to play them, I guess. I think it was Warren Haynes that said that once. We always do this backwards. We record new songs, we go out and tour for 6 months, whatever, and we learn how to play the songs and how they're meant to be played. We should be doing it the other way. So tell us a little bit about the composition and then recording, and correct anything I got wrong in there, please. Actually,
that's you got it. You've definitely done your homework about the band, Jamie, because that was quite accurate. That's great. Yeah. So basically, about 2 years ago, I thought, we released our first album in 2014, and we recorded in 2014. We released it in 2015. So near kind of the middle of 2016, I thought, we should record. We should get some more music together. And I'd written a little bit of music, and I know that the guys had as well. So I decided that we should probably tour it, because we actually rehearse. Well, we used to. Now we're on a bit of a, after the recording and our last tour, we're just kind of taking it easy for the summer. But we get together regularly and rehearse. And like you said, we play a lot. We play. We have a regular gig in Montreal, and I book us as many gigs as possible. So yeah, we put together a tour in April of 2017, and we toured all the way down to New Orleans and back. And that actually, a little bit of a backstory, but the reason we went that far was because I had been to New Orleans in 2016, and while I was there, it inspired me so much that I actually said to my girlfriend, I said, I have to bring the band down here, and we got to check it out, because this is so inspiring. And just to see it together as a group, I think will bring us a lot tighter musically, and just as personally, like the relationships in the group. So So that was actually the first inspiration. So then once we started rehearsing the music more and more, and it took me a year to book our first tour. It's a lot of work to book a tour, but we were rehearsing a lot. Like
you said a mouthful. Sorry? You said a mouthful there. It is really hard to book a tour. So
it's really, I've booked tons of shows before, and I've helped to book tours. But in terms of booking a tour in a foreign country, that was quite the lesson. And I would still have done it if I had known how much work it was going to be. But, I didn't learn until I was about halfway through. And I realized I was only halfway through that, how much work I had gotten myself into. So, it was a lot of work. But so we did a 3-week tour in the United States, and we played some really great concerts. And then we went down to New Orleans and we worked with Delphio Marsalis. So that was also part of it, was that I wanted us to have someone, a really, really incredible musician, producer, educator, to listen to us and to work on what we were doing in person. So Delphio was, in terms of me wanting to bring the band down to New Orleans, he was right away, it was number one, because, he's part of the Marsalis family. So that, that family has contributed so much to the history of jazz music and music in general. But he also, so Delphio is an incredible trombonist, and he performed with Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, Max Roach, like 3 of my favorite drummers. So I was really wanted to meet him and to hang out with him a bit. But he also, a lot of people don't know this, but he often is on the other side of the glass when Wynton and Branford are making their records. He's often the recording engineer, the mixing engineer, the producer of the record. He is very, very skilled at working on production of music. So that's kind of why we went down to work with him, because I want him to hear our compositions, first of all, to give us some advice, but also just to get us like mentally prepared to go into the recording studio. So we spent a day working with him, and he was really cool. He was very encouraging, but he was also, at times he was honest. If he didn't like something, he would say it. If he did like something, he would say it. So he gave us really honest feedback. And then we toured our way back up to Montreal, and we recorded the album, and we had booked the studio for 3 days. But basically, most of the record is first takes. I think aside from 1 second take of my suite, so the first 4 tracks is a suite that I wrote. One of them is a second take, but the other 3 are first takes. And same with, I think Joe's tune Refuge might be. But we just really were well prepared because of all the rehearsing and gigging and then the tour. We kind of just went in and, we knew we had a job to do, and we just like kind of went in and nailed it, so to speak. And then the third day, actually, because we had finished everything, we recorded another record. We brought in a trumpet player and an acoustic guitar, and we recorded an album that was all Charlie Hayden compositions. So we re-released that in January on iTunes. So it's titled Dear Charlie, and it's all Charlie. It's our arrangements of Charlie Hayden recordings. But the main thing that came out of that was Kanata. So that's our new record. And we worked on that music so hard, and I feel so strongly about it. And I felt really emotional when I finally had the CD in my hand, and I went in the car and I was driving around listening to it. And it just that, to see a vision kind of from the seed of an idea, and then to take it all the way to completion is it's really inspiring. So I'll keep working to achieve that type of thing for the rest of my life.
Well, you said a mouthful there too. It's whenever you do a record, it's and this is just my opinion, but every time I've done a record, to me, it's just kind of like this Polaroid. It's a snapshot in time of where I'm at musically today. And sometimes I revisit those things and I go, "Gosh, I wish I'd played something differently," or if it, I wish. But the recording part of it, that's what lives forever. You know, I mean, that's what we're all going to leave behind as musicians is what we've committed to tape or to hard drive, whichever the case may be. So when you say that, it leads me to believe that you can't wait to get back into the studio and put some more music out, or are you just enjoying playing gigs with the band and doing as much touring as you can?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So I guess the answer in terms of going back in the studio is yes and no. So I have a vision of our next album, but it's the compositions. Some of them have started, but I definitely haven't completed them. And I know Joe has one that he's going to probably put on the next record. But so definitely we have an idea and kind of are excited to get into the studio again to record. But also because this kind of the whole project took 2 years, so 1 year to rehearse and for me to book the tour, and then we recorded it, and then this year has been releasing the record, and then we just finished a 1-month tour in the United States. So definitely, this next year is going to be. I've actually started taking piano lessons again, so I want to. I can hear when I listen to the compositions that I contributed. I'm very proud of them, but I can hear things that I want to improve on. So just kind of taking a little bit of time to grow as an artist, and then once I'm ready, then start. Taking the sounds and the images that I can see and hear in my mind, and working on getting that down onto paper and then onto a recording.
Oh, that's awesome. It really is. I am envious of you in that you can sit down at a piano and compose a song and then take it to your band and play it as a drummer. That's not, an arrow that I have in my quiver. I can go to guys that I play with regularly and say, okay, well, I've got an idea. And usually at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, it's not a very good idea. But, I find it interesting when I talk to drummers who compose a lot of the music on their records and that their bands are playing. When you sit down at the piano and you're coming up with these melodic ideas, in the back of your mind, are you thinking about it as a drummer? Okay, when I get to this section, this is exactly the feel I'm going to comp, or are you really just in the melody and the composition piece?
Right. So actually, depending on the piece that I compose, sometimes I compose it just strictly as music. So the second movement of the Kanata Suite Syrian Lullaby, that's very much like I composed that at the piano, and I wasn't thinking about the drums at all. I was just thinking about writing a beautiful piece of music. So there's that one. But then the first movement, Kanata, it's just full of really punchy rhythms, and the guys kind of we pulled teeth learning that piece, but it's very much like kind of drum centric piece. So and then the last movement of the suite, Liberté, which means freedom in English, I just sat down wanting to write kind of a Latin swing tune that was like a little bit Coltrane, kind of Elvin style. So it just depends on the context. But what I basically try to do is just write music that I like, so that when I play drums with it, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think that's a great way to approach it. It's again, it's not a tool that I have, so I've often wondered, how you guys go about it, because I'm sure I would just sit down and try to write cool stuff to play on drums. I mean, that's
right.
That's just me being honest. The recording is so good now, and I was just a little bit lost. You guys did actually record this in New Orleans, is that correct?
Actually, we recorded in Montreal, so we just did. I would say with Delphio, we did like pre-production, but we didn't really. Yeah, it wasn't like credited. Like he wasn't a producer on the record, so it was just kind of playing the stuff. And we would listen to recordings with him, and he would point some stuff out of like things to check out and think about in the studio. But yeah, we recorded it in Montreal.
Okay. Well, I was just curious about it. You mentioned something a little bit earlier that I want to kind of scratch the surface on, if you'll indulge me for just a second. But you were talking about booking a tour in a foreign country. Now, of course, you're talking about the States, and obviously it's not foreign to me and probably the majority of our listeners. What is the jazz scene like in Canada? In other words, if you wanted to tour all across Canada, which I understand is hard just geographically because there's, quite a bit of distance between metropolitan areas. But what is the jazz scene like in Canada? Are you more mindful of how your records are received in the States, or is there a good scene in Canada that you want it to be received well in both places?
Yeah, actually, so Canada, I mean, it's not the United States, so it doesn't have, the jazz started in the United States, and so it's kind of basically from New Orleans up to the northern parts of the United States to New York City. It definitely has, the strongest scene like in the whole world. So, but relatively speaking, Canada has a very strong jazz scene, and first of all, because it's so close to the United States, so there's a lot of crossover. A lot of people move down to the United States, or they go to, they'll go to the Manhattan School in New York, or, any strong university programs in the States, and then they come back up to Canada. So there's a lot of really strong players. There's also some strong players who are from Canada, such as Seamus Blake, the great saxophonist. And, he lives in New York City, and he's been playing with the top players in New York for a couple of decades. So it definitely has a very strong scene. But the thing is, because like you said, it's such a large country, and there isn't really much in terms of population. We only have 35 million people or something, and we have this huge country. So also the thing, I'm not going to get into this, but the gas prices in Canada you guys have it so easy down there. We pay, doing the U.S. to Canada conversion in gallons to liters, it's hard to say exactly, but, we pay probably about 40% more for our gas. So, for us to tour in Canada, it's going to be minimum 6 hours to the next place, the next kind of major city. But in some places, going across kind of the middle, like the prairies, we'll be driving 8 to 10 hours to the next gig. So, and because gas is so much more expensive, basically people rely on arts grants. So Canada does have a really strong funding system, and there's 3 different agencies that fund artists to tour across Canada. Unfortunately, I haven't received one to tour Canada yet, so hopefully next summer we can do that. But the U.S., the reason why I went down there originally was because, I'm to get our butts kicked and go play for American audiences. So, I just kind of going down and playing for audiences that really there's such a larger audience for jazz, and so just putting us on the spot so we would really grow as artists. So that was kind of the main idea. And in terms of if we've definitely been pushing the album in both countries. So in the United States, we've been pushing it a lot, and we've been getting radio play on a lot of stations in the States. But also in Canada, we've been getting some really nice album reviews and are getting played all across the country. So I'm definitely very proud when I hear good things from Canadians and how they react and accept the music, but also when I hear from the United States, from the audiences at the concerts, and from people in the media such as yourself, just who know what good music is, and then you say, "Wow, I really like your record." It's a great feeling because of the history of the music in the United States.
Absolutely. And well, I'm going to say this. We're recording this interview on June 20th of 2018. I have a feeling gas prices are going to go down in Canada and your population is going to grow. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'll let everybody Google and figure out what happened on June 19th in Canada. But my social media feed has been full of my musician buddies saying, well, that's it, I'm moving to Canada. So, I'll just leave that there. You guys can figure it out on your own. No more commentary from me on that. But you bring up a really good point in that, it's hard for a band, from Canada, from anywhere for that matter, to break into the United States, because there's so many bands in the United States that are trying to break. It's just, we live in an era of almost oversaturation, really, because everybody has a recording studio. My show is fairly new. Everybody has a podcast, right? It's just so hard to compete and get a piece of that bandwidth. Everybody is overloaded with new music to listen to. And, even some of my favorite artists will release a record that I don't even know about, just because it gets lost in the static. So that's a really good point that you bring up. What was the reception like down here in the States when you guys did the longer tour? I mean, I know you were received well, but did you? And I know it's about the networking. So tell us a little bit about how the tour went.
Yeah. So we toured from Bristol, New Hampshire, which is like, an hour on the other side of the border from Canada. That was our first gig. And then we toured as far down as Richmond, Virginia, and Atlanta, and then up to Chicago, and then we kind of came back home. So we played, I think, 18 concerts. There was 15 or 14 of them were in the United States. Overall, the tour, I think, was a big success. We had some really good turnouts, and people always seemed to like the music. We also did perform with some guests. We actually ended up performing with Delfio. We flew him up to Atlanta, and we played with him there. And he was complimenting us a lot. And in general, we sold a good amount of CDs at all of our shows. And the audiences seemed to really enjoy the music. They'd always come and talk to us after the show, and we'd be signing autographs and stuff like that. So feeling like rock stars for a night. And it was our tour last year. We had the crowds definitely were bigger, and it seemed like the audiences really enjoyed it.
That's great. Well, I mean, the record speaks for itself, and I'm going to encourage all my listeners to go pick it up, because it is, it's just a great jazz record. It truly is. Now, you mentioned earlier, and we haven't gotten to your influences yet, but you've mentioned a lot of great drummers, in our time that we've been talking here, Brandon. Tell us a little bit, and you mentioned that you play in a blues band, you play in a rock band. So tell us a little bit about some of the guys that have really influenced you as a player in all genres of music.
Okay, yeah. So, my first one, as I mentioned earlier, was the first kind of band that I got really into was as a 11, 12-year-old was Nirvana. So I really love. Well, first of all, just the way Kurt Cobain sang in his songwriting, but Dave Grohl was such a creative drummer, and had such a great groove, and just his ideas and the way he played drums was very unique. So he was probably my first real influence on the drums. And then from there, it went to my parents got me for Christmas the Led Zeppelin Physical Graffiti. So, I didn't have any idea about that, but, my parents, they listened to Led Zeppelin when they were younger. So they're like, cool, you're getting into music, you're getting into drums, check this guy out. And at first I didn't really know what to think about it, but eventually it kind of grew on me. I think once I started playing along to the record a bit, and I realized like what John Bonham was doing. So he was a really big influence on me, and still is. And then from there, once I got into jazz a little bit when I was around 16, the first guy for me was Tony Williams. So I think I checked out Miles Smiles, which is just a fantastic record, and it has Tony playing, just unbelievably incredible kind of technically advanced, but just extremely musical as well. So he was the next big influence. And then from there, I just kind of went through the lineage of jazz drumming and tried to check out as many guys as I could, and as many recordings of them, and reading about their history and their upbringing and that kind of stuff. So, but I guess in my later years, then it was definitely Elvin Jones, Max Roach, and then, you know, my favorite drummer is Art Blakey. So, you know, he played with so much passion and fire, and he was the main influence when I started my band. So our first gig was at the Montreal Jazz Festival, and we played mostly Jazz Messengers arrangements. So he was another big influence. I mean, those are the big guys for me. In terms of blues music, you know, I just listen to as much blues as I can, and I play along to the recordings constantly. So I don't have a kind of a favorite blues drummer, but, you know, I really admire the whole genre, and that just to get a good blues shuffle is you know, kind of an art in itself. So
it really is. And hence the name of my show, you know, the drum shuffle. I mean, and I chose that simply because it's the first thing you learn to do that isn't just kind of straight time as a drummer. It's it's the first thing you do that you go, wow, I might be onto something. You know, that first time you play a smoking shuffle, you know, you're just like, wow, oh man. So that's kind of why I chose it. But yeah, shuffling is definitely an art, and there's a lot of that stuff comes from the jazz guys. You know, I mean, it really does. Brandon, you know, in the effort of not you know, keeping you all night while you're on vacation, one of our traditions here at the Drum Shuffle is we always ask our guests for a good piece of advice for other musicians, for other drummers. You know, I'm not calling you out here, but you're a young guy, you know, and I think it's awesome that you're so into jazz and blues and older styles of music. It gives, you know, old guys like me great hope that good music will continue, you know, for years to come. But, you know, in your career, you've done a lot of awesome stuff. Share a good piece of advice with our listeners. What have you learned?
Okay, cool. So I guess the thing that came to me when you were saying that was just about what we were talking about earlier, was about the drummer band leaders. So basically, you know, I just started the project because it's the music that I wanted to play. So I guess my advice would be, even if, you know, you think as a drummer, maybe you don't know a lot about harmony or a lot about booking gigs, other people are booking the gigs, I really encourage every drummer out there to book some gigs themselves, and just to put together music that they really enjoy. So you don't even have to write original music. Just put together music, if it's some R&B or jazz or some rock covers, or you write some bass lines and some guitar stuff, you bring them to a band, you guys rehearse and play a show. But I found that that's when I really started to grow as an artist, was when I started leading my own group. And I'd been playing in other bands as a sideman for over 10 years before I started this project. So it's really probably the most satisfying thing that I've done in my music career is to start my own project. And I was very lucky that, you know, my band, they wanted to keep going with it. But I would just say, like, don't even worry if there's going to be another gig. Just like book the gig, put together the band, put together some tunes, and go and play it. And it's I promise you will grow as an artist and as a human being. And so I guess that's my advice.
Oh, that's a great piece of advice, without a doubt. You're wise beyond your years. And you know, one final thing that I want to ask you, Brandon, which I think is really cool, and I didn't know that you had, you know, personally booked the whole tour yourself. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of running your band you on your own. You know, I'm sure you have lots of great help from family and friends and your band members, but you know, you brought up something that kind of sparked an idea in my head. And this has kind of been a running theme about drummers taking control of their careers. And your piece of advice, really keyed me in on that. I've pretty much been a sideman my whole life, and I've been able to, in the past few years, do a lot of studio sessions, which is great. But, it's really taking control of your career so that you're not beholden to somebody else. Share as much as you can about, running your band as a business, if you don't mind.
Right. So, that's what I have been doing, and running, like you said, the whole group. Basically, myself, but actually that would be very wrong of me to say myself, because there are so many people who also put in their time and a lot of effort into the project. So, first of all, the band, they're willing to go on all these crazy adventures and listen to my crazy ideas. So, so basically, I just can't stress enough how if you put your mind to it, how much you can actually do yourself. And, I didn't know about booking tours before I booked our first tour, in terms of actually the logistics. Like I said earlier, I've helped to book tours, but actually running the whole thing myself, that was just kind of trial by fire. And I made a lot of errors, but also, there was a lot of good things that came out of it as well. So just always being humble and accepting the mistakes, and then you're going to grow from those, and you'll just get better and better at it. So, I don't have any special training in terms of business, running a business or booking tours or anything like that. And I'm not the most harmonically inclined person. So, my band members are often, helping me out in that regard. So again, just being humble and accepting their help, because they know more than me. And in all regards, just always listening to people's advice, and being cool, being considerate towards the people, and knowing that everyone is we're all kind of on the same path. So just working as a team.
Yeah, that's great insight, Brandon. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time away from your family to come on the show. And I know your nephew is just dying to see you. So I'm going to let you go get with your nephew. Brandon, it goes without saying, you're welcome on this program anytime. Please keep us posted on any tours down here to the States, any new releases. We would love to hear all about that. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks to you, Jamie. And it was, I just love talking drums and hanging out with other drummers. So it was a real pleasure to be on your show.
Well, we're lucky we had you, Brandon. Again, the record is fantastic. Everybody go grab it. You will not regret that decision. It is a fantastic record. Brandon, we will talk to you very, very soon. Best of luck to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Same to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up episode 27 of the Drum Shuffle. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We can't do any of this without every single one of you. Please tell a friend about us. Share a link with a friend who you think might enjoy the show. That helps us tremendously. Also, go ahead and hit the subscribe button to whatever platform you're using to listen in today. We want to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We've got some great guests coming up over the next few weeks. I'm working on some really recognizable names. That's about all I can say at this juncture, but suffice it to say, we're going to have some really cool guests coming up over the next few weeks, and we certainly don't want you to miss any of those. We also love hearing from each and every one of you throughout the week. Shoot us an email. Our email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com, and you can find more information about me over at jamieeads.com. I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for tuning in. We will catch you guys next week. So until next time, may your heads stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers.